Welcome everyone. My name is Susan Patterson. I'm the host for this YouTube channel, and I'm thrilled to have my friend and associate in the fight against human trafficking here with me today, Patrick Erlandson. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's so great to be here.
Yes, Patrick will be sharing about his project to empower fathers as a way to prevent exploitation. When predators tell victims that they love them, they believed it, because so many of them didn't know the true love of a father. Patrick will let us know how he equips men to reduce that vulnerability. Just to give you a little more background on Patrick, in 2012 he began leading the prevention subcommittee of the Long Beach Human Trafficking Task Force. He has become a speaker and activist and organized a number of events, such as the 2 youth exploitation safety symposiums for the city of Long Beach, and he founded and organized 2 major events, which is FatherCon, which we'll be talking about today, and the See It, End It Film and Arts Festival. And I'll be doing an interview with Patrick on the Arts Festival in this video. Patrick assumed leadership of Men Standing Against Trafficking in Long Beach and led a demonstration against human trafficking every month for 4 years until COVID. With a focus on prevention, Patrick has presented workshops on the link between human trafficking and pornography across Southern California. So Patrick, what brought you to the issue of equipping men to be better fathers in order to prevent sex trafficking?
Well, it was 10 years of looking at prevention and trying to look upstream at what was the cause. Why were we having so many girls being exploitable, and why were we having so many men becoming justifying being able to pay for sex with in many cases children? And I started looking at what was missing, what was the kind of common denominator in talking to survivors and talking to men and fathers, and realizing that it was this gap of having no father, having an abusive father, a distracted father, in some cases an exploitive father, that led to this kind of explosion of kids being trafficked in America today. And so I started to really look at that. How do we start to engage men, and specifically, how do we start to engage fathers in the fight against human trafficking? Because they're having this tremendous impact on their children, and through their children on their communities. So if we can get fathers on board, aware and engaged, where they start to realize the significance of their role in the lives of their children, the values that their children are developing, how their children feel about themselves, then also they start to really influence the entire community around them.
Yes, outstanding. So what kind of speakers do you have at your event?
Well, we've had 2 different FatherCons, and they were both structured differently. The first one in 2018, we had about 15 different speakers that had workshops. So we broke up into kind of a smaller engagement with a smaller group. We had everything from coming of age, how that's really missing in Western society. We had Tim Rarick, Dr. Tim Rarick, who's just an amazing authority on the father-daughter relationship, who's spoken numerous times at the UN and different places. We had speakers, former athletes from the Redskins. We had people who have been through a lot of tragedy and turmoil in their lives and had to shift and come back to a point of really engaging with their purpose as fathers and as men, and what kind of contribution they wanted to make. We've had pastors, we've had, like I said, former athletes, we've had people who have worked with mentoring. Donald Parrish came from Texas for both events, who's a leader in engaging men and becoming mentors and father figures for those who don't have a father in their home. So we've had speakers dealing with a lot of different aspects of lack. We appealed to grandfathers. We have more and more children growing up not with their biological father, but with a father figure, and a lot of times that's a grandparent. It can be a neighbor. It can be someone who, like a big brother. But we need to have a healthy role model in the lives of boys growing up. And so we've had different speakers talking about different aspects of how you could become a mentor, how you could become a foster father. So we really tried to have engaging speakers, former FBI agents who dealt with the exploitation of children. So we've really tried to engage fathers, but coming from different perspectives. So like like law enforcement, like legislature, like coming up with the laws that really need to be enacted. We've dealt with a lot of different aspects of what happens in the home and what happens within the man. So my particular concern and passion is around pornography, because I think pornography is what's really feeding the demand, and it's massive and pervasive, and it's 24/7 on every single device that you can possibly have.
Yes. Very good. So I know that anyone I've talked to who's been to your conferences has raved about the caliber of your speakers. I mean, this is the kind of conference people talk about for days, months afterwards. I can't even begin to tell you how it's outstanding his venues are. So what is the ultimate goal of FatherCon? What does success look like?
For me, it's like the heartbreaking kind of engagement of fathers with human trafficking is we're losing so many good men. And I think everything starts with a lie. And unfortunately, we live in a cultural stew that's constantly feeding us a lie about what's really going to make us happy. And men are particularly vulnerable. We've had such massive shifts since around the 1950s in the home life in America. And the growing sense that men are not so important, that we're kind of collateral to the family and to the raising of children. That's beginning to shift, but we need a lot more. We need men to really stand up and be aware of their significance and the impact that they're having. I mean, some of the data, now we've got about 50 years of research on the significance of fathers. Before that, almost all the research was on how important the mother is. But now we finally have data on the role that fathers play in shaping the attitudes and hearts and the sense of self-worth that a daughter has, or the role that a boy feels. That in stepping into becoming a man, we now have much more conclusive data on that and the importance of it. And in not heeding that data, we are now stuffing our prisons full of boys who are growing up without a positive role model, without a positive father figure in their life. So my hope for FatherCon is really that we start to excite men and excite fathers and educate future fathers about how important their role is. And that when we deviate, when we get derailed, which so often happens with different addictive behaviors now, with whether it's alcohol and drugs or pornography and sex, we're losing men to their true happiness, their true fulfillment as fathers. They're looking for it in all the wrong places, as the song goes. And we have to get back on track to where our fathers really start to realize and start to experience that their greatest joy and happiness in life comes from having a daughter who wants to marry someone like you, or a son who wants to grow up and be like you. That's so much more fulfilling than anything you can get in the backseat of a car with a 12-year-old. It's so much more fulfilling than the experience that you're going to have sitting for hours and hours and hours going through porn. It's so much more fulfilling than feeling like you're doing enough by just bringing home, a paycheck. And this is what I hope to really excite men about, and that FatherCon can be kind of ignite this whole movement of fathers who really start to appreciate who they are and the uniqueness of their contribution to not just their family, but as families are healthy and whole, then we start to see a change in communities and in society in our country. And God bless our world.
Yeah, beautiful. So powerful. I know that the boys I've known who don't have fathers in their life, they just seem so lost.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just so lost. So what do you know works to inspire men to want to become better fathers to their daughters and sons? You've already talked about some of it. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I think men are carrying around a tremendous amount of shame, and they're overcompensating. They're trying to deal with it in so many ways. And we haven't really done a good job within the church communities. We haven't really done a good job of creating a safe place for men to really kind of look at what they're doing in their lives. They're creating this kind of shame, and instead they're being pushed to justify it. So you're being pushed more and more to feel like I have to defend this lifestyle, instead of really looking at how it's causing you to feel broken and distant, and it's leading to more and more. Marriage is broken. It's leading to more and more pain that doesn't have to be there. And so I think we need to do a much better job of creating kind of a compassionate understanding and creating an environment where men can actually honestly look at themselves and change. And I think a lot is beginning to happen in that area, but there just needs to be so much more.
Yes.
We just have too many men that are carrying around their brokenness and feeling that they're the worst people in the world. I want to give you one example, and this just came up recently. and this was related to a man who was sexually abused by his mother when he was a child. And he later went on, he suppressed everything, covered everything, never dealt with it. He ended up having a family, and when his son reached the age that he was at, when he was being abused, he got totally triggered. And the way that he dealt with being triggered was he started looking at porn and abuses of boys. And I think we can all look at that and go, what a crazy thing to do. But this is what happened in his life. He started to look at what happened to him, and he started to engage with pornography as kind of a release, as something that kind of made sense of what happened to him. He ended up getting blackmailed. Whoever it was who was tapping into his account knew what he was looking at and threatened him that he was going to expose, the pornography he was looking at to the world. He confessed everything to his wife and then went into the garage and killed himself.
Oh no.
So now we have two children growing up without a father who are experiencing all of the anger and rage of being abandoned by the man that they love, the father in their life, because of this lie, and because of the abuse that he carried. He was never able to speak about it. We have got to do better at allowing men to be able to talk about the dark corners of their hearts and the experiences that they've had. Because if they carry it, if they keep it inside, it ends up coming out in a negative way. And that's what really concerns me. We have fathers that are not going to be able to celebrate the wedding of their daughters. We have men that are not going to be there for these key moments in their life because they're broken and they're not finding any way to deal with what they're carrying in their hearts. So this is really my heart for FatherCon.
Wow, so sad. So very sad. And it's not just that story. I mean, there's probably a million stories like that.
There are.
Yes, of how destructive porn is in the life of any man. Women too, but particularly for men. So, which brings me to my next question, which is, tell us about your campaign where you're focusing on pornography as a way to prevent mainly sex trafficking. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think the links between pornography and human trafficking are pretty clear, and I think that there's several ways that they're really pervasive. One thing I felt, and I have to say, I've had problems with pornography in the past myself. I was exposed when I was very young to pornography. I think the very first time was collecting newspapers, a newspaper drive for the Catholic school that I went to, and someone had contributed a whole stack of Playboy magazines, and that was my first exposure. And it's like, I think back and I can still remember the smell of those magazines, what it felt like to actually open them and look inside. And I think we have an awful lot of men who experienced pornography at a very young age, and it changed who they developed to be. I mean, it's like, what would I have been like if I never got exposed to pornography? If I never saw those images, how different would I have developed? And now it's like nothing in comparison. We have 24/7 internet porn of the most degrading type. So much of it is violence towards women. And this is becoming normalized for men. So I think we have come from this from many different backgrounds of exposure to pornography. But pornography normalizes a certain way of looking at other human beings. And this is extremely destructive for the man who's looking, but also for the children. So as men more and more disengage because of their involvement with pornography, they become less engaged with their wife, and then they become less of a role model for their daughters as to what a healthy relationship looks like between a father and a daughter. Boys start to follow the example of their fathers, and a lot of times they're following them down a very broken path. So there's an influence that a father has on their children when they're engaging in pornography. And also one thing that many men don't realize, and I went through all of the data from Pornhub for numerous years, and you start to look at how they collect that data. It means every single time you click on an image, every time you click on a video, Pornhub and all of the different porn producers now online, they're monitoring that, registering it. This is telling them what we need more of. And so the very nature of pornography is that it appeals to the part of your brain that that's curious. And so you start requiring more and more stimulation. You start looking at more and more exotic and more degrading content over time. And so the more that you're looking at those things, the pornographers are all saying, okay, we need to produce more of this, we need more of this, we need more of this. So if you're going to have someone who's having an experience of being raped by 5 men, there are not many girls or women who can be paid enough to go through that kind of abuse and experience. Therefore, the fact that you're just clicking anonymously in the dark of your own private bedroom, you're sending a message to pornographers that then tells them that we require more violence against women. We require more abuse of women. We require someone to be abused. That's going to be a trafficking victim. We have more and more the testimony of girls who have been trafficked talking about their experience being filmed and put in pornography. And so there's a connection there between your private, I'm not paying for anything, it's already made, I'm not doing anything to anyone. I'm just looking at something that's already been produced, so there's no harm, no foul. The fact is, just by clicking on it, you're sending a message to pornographers that we need to get more trafficked victims to be able to produce more content for more and more and more men. And this is the thing that's really tragic. So not only are we creating vulnerable daughters who then become easily exploited, who may end up in pornography, we're not only creating sons who feel justified and feel that this is the way for me to be a man is by engaging and looking at porn, but we're also sending messages to pornographers that they need more trafficked victims to be able to produce the kind of porn that men are clicking on. So I think there's a lot of areas where there's a connection between pornography and human trafficking, and also just the men who want to act out. I mean, every survivor I've talked to has talked about men looking at porn and saying, yeah, this is what I want to do to your body, this is what I want to do to you. So it's creating kind of an interest, a curiosity, a desire that your wife and girlfriend are not gonna satisfy. So then there's a need to go out and pay for sex.
Yeah, I've heard from many victims, they can tell who the men are who are watching violent porn. I mean, they unfortunately, they show in that porn the woman enjoying it.
Right.
So the buyers are assuming these women are going to be into it, and they go through a lot of pain. I mean, it's really horrific. So I share your passion.
Yeah.
Yes.
And to me, it's since I've been working in the prevention of trafficking, it's easier to have a sympathy for the girl and the girl who's being exploited. And I think, and that's absolutely essential and necessary, that we have an empathy for the victims there. But I think we often don't see the men as victims.
Yes.
And this is what I think has to change. And this is where I think we can be really powerful in engaging men, is to realize you're being targeted. As a man, you're being targeted and you're being groomed to value something that's really has no value.
At a very young age.
At a very young age, younger and younger.
Yes.
I read the reports. There was a conference for boys and men, and this was a religious conference, and part of it was talking about pornography. And they had everyone write an anonymous kind of evaluation of the conference and what they heard. And so it was forwarded to me, and I read through them. And the one that was most heartbreaking was a 6-year-old boy whose older brother exposed him to porn. And at first he was horrified, and he didn't want to see it. And by the age of 10, he was so addicted to it, he couldn't stop looking for it. He couldn't stop himself. He couldn't see a screen without wanting to look at porn. And the age of 6. And now it's very common for boys as young as 8, 9, 10 to have their first exposure to pornography. So what really concerns me the most is that we have children deciding who they're going to be. Their identity is being shaped around the images and the pornography that they're being exposed to at a really young age. They're deciding how they're going to feel about themselves, how they're going to relate to other human beings. What's valuable to them is being shaped by an industry that really wants them to become lifelong addicts of their product. And this is what really disturbs me, because they're then going to approach relationships. They're going to engage in relationships with other people with this prodding them and pushing them in the back of their minds, what they've seen in pornography. The expectation of what a girl enjoys, what she's looking forward to, what's supposed to please him. And I think this is the removal of intimacy from kind of sexual relationships is really destructive. And it's like you're being told over and over repeatedly that this is what's going to give you pleasure. No strings attached sex. You're gonna enjoy doing whatever you want to this human being, and that's going to somehow make you happier than actually caring and having a mutual experience with another human being. But I mean, all of this is being shaped. Your identity as a boy, as a man, as a human being is being shaped by an industry that wants you to be addicted to their product. And that's just awful. And so I think, again, really looking at the influence, the power that pornography has in creating shame, and that shame then is going to be buried deep within that boy as he grows into a man, and it's something that carries with him in a very destructive way, and it leads him to behavior that confirms his badness, and this is what's leading to so many divorces. It's leading to so many problems in the home later. It's then resulting in children not having a father in the home and all of the problems that come with that.
Yes, I think it's in the reports I've read, something like over 80% of divorces had some kind of porn viewing component.
Yeah, there's a lot of different 500,000 divorces I've heard a year.
Yes. Yes.
I think it's kind of hard to nail down because we live now in an environment that has so many pushes and pulls.
Yes.
That are driving families apart. Really sad, because the consequences are children who are not going to grow up in the environment they need for a healthy, development of their identity and to have healthy relationships in the future.
Yes. So everyone, obviously Patrick has a very powerful message. So if you're a man, I highly recommend that you try to attend his conferences. Some of them are hybrid events where they have both Zoom and in person. So if you're not in the Southern California area, you can look for that. So Patrick, if someone wanted to register for your event, how would they do that?
Father-con.org is the address for the website and where you can register, get updates on everything that we're doing. And we want to bring FatherCon to wherever you're living. So we really want this to become a movement of breaking the con that men are facing. We really want to kind of disrupt the lie that men are kind of enduring and is derailing them, and really empower them to experience life much more fully and with greater satisfaction as fathers. And that's going to trickle down. That's going to translate to healthier relationships with your children and fewer and fewer girls that are going to be exploitable by someone they meet on Instagram. So
yes.
please come, father-con.org.
Very good. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank
this
you for
was
having me,
outstanding,
Susan.
as always.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.